My name is Jed Walker, 35 years old and the founder of a small tech startup that nobody in my family believes in. All my life, I stood in the shadow of my older brother Derek, the golden child with the perfect corporate job. Last week, when I proudly showed my new business cards at our family dinner, Derek just laughed. "Stop pretending to be successful," he said, tossing my cards in the trash. He had no idea that 1 week later, I would walk into his company as his new boss. Before I tell you how this happened, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If your family has ever underestimated you, hit that subscribe button now. Growing up in suburban Boston during the 90s, I always felt like I was competing for attention with my brother Derek. 3 years older, 3 inches taller, and seemingly 3 times more accomplished at everything that mattered to our parents. Our childhood home in Lexington was plastered with Derek's achievements. Honor roll certificates, debate team trophies, baseball championship photos. My creative projects and entrepreneurial attempts were relegated to the garage or quietly disposed of when I was at school. The pattern established itself early and persisted throughout our childhood. When I was 12 and Derek was 15, we both entered the regional science fair. I spent weeks building a computer program that could generate music based on weather patterns, something I thought was genuinely innovative. My parents barely glanced at it during the month I worked on it after school. Derek created a textbook experiment about plant growth with different fertilizers, straight from the standard curriculum. The night before the fair, my parents stayed up until midnight helping him create perfect display boards with professional lettering and photographs. "This is how you present yourself professionally, Derek," my father said, not even looking in my direction as I struggled to print my program documentation on our failing home printer. Universities notice this level of polish. At the fair, Derek won second place in the biological sciences category. I received an honorable mention for creativity, which my father dismissed as a participation trophy. That night, we went out for dinner to celebrate Derek's achievement. No one mentioned my project again. The contrast in our treatment became even more pronounced during high school graduations. When Derek graduated, my parents rented a local venue and invited over 70 relatives and family friends. They hired caterers, ordered a professional cake with his college logo, and gave him a new laptop as a graduation gift. 3 years later, when I graduated, we had a small backyard barbecue with just our immediate family, and my parents gave me a gift card to Best Buy. "College is different for everyone, Jed," my mother said when I pointed out the discrepancy. Derek was going to Princeton. It was a special accomplishment. The college choice became another battlefield. Derek was accepted to Princeton with a partial scholarship, and my parents proudly covered the substantial remaining costs without complaint. When I received acceptance to a solid state university with a decent computer science program, my parents immediately began suggesting community college as a more practical first step. "We just want to make sure you have a clear career path," my father explained when I expressed interest in studying business and technology. "Your brother knew exactly what he wanted from day one." What they never understood was that I did know what I wanted. While Derek aspired to climb the corporate ladder, I dreamed of building something of my own. In high school, I had already started earning money fixing computers for neighbors and building simple websites for local businesses. These achievements were dismissed as hobbies rather than early entrepreneurial ventures. By the time I entered college, I had learned to stop seeking approval and instead focus on developing skills I knew would be valuable. I took courses in programming, digital marketing, and business management while working part-time maintaining the university website. I saved every dollar possible, knowing I would need capital to start my own business someday. Meanwhile, Derek was completing his business degree at Princeton, networking with the children of executives, and securing internships at prestigious firms. During my junior year of college, we all gathered for Thanksgiving dinner when Derek made his big announcement. "I have some exciting news," he said, waiting for everyone to look up from their plates. "I just accepted a job offer from Blackwell Industries starting after graduation. Full benefits, signing bonus, and a clear path to management. My parents nearly burst with pride. My father opened an expensive bottle of scotch he had been saving for a special occasion. My mother called relatives before dessert was even served. Blackwell is one of the top firms in the country, my father told anyone who would listen. They only hire from the Ivy League. When the attention finally shifted and someone politely asked about my studies, my mother quickly interjected. Jed is still figuring things out. But the computer stuff keeps him busy. I smiled tightly and said nothing. That night, I made a silent promise to myself that someday I would build something significant enough that they couldn't dismiss it as just computer stuff. After college graduation, while Derek moved into a sleek apartment downtown and started his corporate career at Blackwell Industries, I took a very different path. I found a job as a technical support specialist at a small software company, a position that barely utilized my skills, but paid the bills while giving me evenings and weekends to work on my own projects. My apartment was a studio in a rundown building on the outskirts of Boston, with just enough space for a bed and a desk with my computer set up. While Derek posted social media updates about business class flights to conferences and expense account dinners, I lived on ramen noodles and coffee, saving every possible dollar toward my startup capital. During family gatherings, the contrast in our lives became a recurring theme. So Derek is being considered for the junior executive program already, my mother announced proudly at one Sunday dinner, 6 months after graduation. That is wonderful, sweetie, she beamed at Derek before turning to me with a concerned expression. And Jed, are you still at that help desk job? Actually, I am developing a new software platform, I replied, trying to inject enthusiasm into my voice. It helps small businesses manage their customer relationships and marketing in an integrated system. My father frowned, fork paused midway to his mouth. Is there really a market for that? Seems like there would be bigger companies already doing it if it was viable. That is the opportunity, I explained. The big enterprise solutions are too expensive and complex for small businesses, but my system is designed specifically for their needs and budget. Derek chuckled. When will you get a real job, little brother? You cannot live in that closet of an apartment, forever playing with your computer games. They are not games, I said quietly. I have 3 clients already testing the beta version. But no one was listening anymore. The conversation had already shifted to Derek's upcoming business trip to Chicago. Those first 2 years after college were the hardest. During the day, I answered basic technical questions and reset passwords for frustrated users. At night, I coded until my eyes burned, building my customer relationship management platform piece by piece. On weekends, I attended every small business networking event I could find, handing out homemade business cards and offering free trials to anyone willing to give my software a chance. My first real client was a local florist who took a chance on my system when her existing solution became too expensive. When she reported a 15% increase in repeat business after 3 months using my platform, I felt a validation I had never experienced from my family. I used her testimonial to secure 3 more clients, then 10, then 20. Eventually, I had saved enough from my regular job and my growing side business to take the leap. I quit my support position and focused full-time on my company, which I named ConnectCore Solutions. The day I submitted my resignation, I called my parents, hoping they might finally see the potential in what I was building. "You did what?" my father exclaimed when I told him I had quit my job. "To work on your computer project. How will you pay rent?" "The company is generating revenue now, Dad," I explained. "And I just signed our biggest client yet. Their annual contract alone covers my basic expenses." "This is so irresponsible, Jed," my mother chimed in from the extension. "Derek just got promoted to account manager. He is on a career track." "What track are you on?" I swallowed my frustration. "I am creating my own track." A year into full-time operation, ConnectCore had grown enough that I needed to hire my first employee, a customer success specialist named Amir who believed in the product so much he took a pay cut from his corporate job to join me. We worked from a tiny office space I rented in a shared business complex. Nothing fancy, but a step up from my apartment. With increasing client demand, I needed to expand further but lacked the capital. After dozens of rejections from traditional banks and investors who wanted to see more established growth, I finally found one supporter who understood my vision. Martin Fisher, a retired technology executive who had started his own successful company decades earlier, agreed to invest $50,000 in exchange for a 15% stake in ConnectCore. "I see myself in you," Martin told me after reviewing my business plan. "Everyone told me my ideas would never work too." With Martin's investment, I was able to hire 2 more employees and develop the next generation of our software. We moved to a slightly larger office space, still modest but with actual meeting rooms and a small kitchen. For the first time, I felt like a real business owner. To mark this milestone, I decided to have professional business cards printed. No more cheap homemade versions on perforated paper from the office supply store. These were heavy stock with raised lettering and our newly designed company logo. When the box arrived, I held one of the cards in my hand, feeling its weight and texture with a sense of accomplishment I could barely articulate. Jed Walker, founder and CEO, ConnectCore Solutions. It might not have been Blackwell Industries, but it was mine, built from nothing but determination and countless sleepless nights. The following weekend was my father's 60th birthday celebration. I decided this would be the perfect opportunity to share my progress with my family. Perhaps now, with real employees and a proper investor, they would finally take my business seriously. The evening of my father's 60th birthday, I arrived at my parents' house feeling unusually optimistic. In my pocket were my new business cards, tangible proof of how far ConnectCore had come. The weight of those cards gave me confidence as I walked through the front door. The house was filled with familiar faces, mostly family friends who had known us since childhood. Derek had arrived before me, naturally, and was holding court in the living room, regaling everyone with stories of his recent business trip to Tokyo. The Japanese clients insisted we try this restaurant where they serve blowfish, he was saying to an attentive audience. Potentially deadly if prepared incorrectly, but Blackwell spares no expense. Our dinner cost more than some people make in a week. I nodded politely to a few guests and made my way to the kitchen to help my mother with the food. She was arranging canapes on a silver platter, her face flushed with the exertion and the pleasure of hosting. "Need any help, Mom?" I offered. "Oh, Jed, you are here," she said, glancing up briefly. "Could you take these out?" Derek was just telling everyone about his promotion. "Did you hear he is now managing his own team at Blackwell?" "No, I had not heard," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "But I actually have some good news of my own to share." "That is nice, dear," she said absently, already focused on the next tray of hors d'oeuvres. Throughout dinner, the conversation revolved primarily around Derek's accomplishments and my father's retirement plans. Several relatives asked Derek for investment advice, hanging on his every word as he confidently explained market trends and corporate strategies. No one asked about my work. Finally, as dessert was being served, I saw my opening when my uncle inquired about how business was going for everyone. "Actually," I said, seizing the momentary lull in conversation, "my company has been growing steadily. We just moved into a larger office space and hired 2 new developers last month." A few polite nods greeted this announcement, but I could see the lack of real interest in most eyes around the table. "We also secured a significant investment from Martin Fisher," I continued, mentioning the name with a hint of pride, hoping someone might recognize it. "Who?" my father asked. Fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Martin Fisher. He founded Tech Dynamics in the 90s. Sold it to Microsoft for $80 million. "Never heard of him," my father shrugged, returning to his chocolate cake. Undeterred, I reached into my pocket. I brought some of my new business cards to share. We just had them professionally designed with our new logo. I placed a small stack on the table. The cards looked sleek and professional against the white tablecloth, the embossed logo catching the light from the dining room chandelier. For a moment, I felt a surge of pride seeing my creation displayed before my family. Derek picked one up, examined it for a moment, then let out a sharp laugh. Founder and CEO of Connect Core Solutions. Bit grandiose for a one-man show working out of a shoebox office, is not it? We have 5 employees now, actually, I corrected him. And our new office is 1,200 square feet. Come on, Jed, Derek said, his voice taking on that familiar condescending tone he had perfected since childhood. Stop pretending to be successful. This is not in the same league as a real company like Blackwell. Before I could respond, he casually tossed my card back onto the pile, and then, with a dismissive flick of his wrist, swept the entire stack off the table and into the nearby trash can. When you have a corner office on the 30th floor, dental insurance, and clients who actually have heard of you, then print business cards, he said, smirking. A heavy silence fell over the table. I stared at the trash can, my face burning with humiliation. What hurt most was not Derek's action, but the fact that no one, not even my parents, said a word in my defense. My mother awkwardly offered more cake. My father cleared his throat and asked my aunt about her recent vacation. For the remainder of the evening, I sat quietly, contributing little to the conversation. As soon as it was politely possible to leave, I made my excuses and headed out. No one tried very hard to make me stay. The drive home that night was one of the longest of my life. Rain had started to fall, matching my mood as I navigated the wet streets back to my apartment. In my mind, I kept replaying the image of my cards falling into the trash, years of work dismissed with a casual flick of my brother's wrist. The headlights of oncoming traffic blurred through tears I refused to let fall. By the time I reached my apartment, the humiliation had begun to harden into something else. Determination. I changed into comfortable clothes and, despite the late hour, sat down at my computer. If my family could not see the value in what I was building, I would create something so undeniably successful they would have no choice but to recognize it. I worked through the night, refining a new feature of our software that I had been conceptualizing for weeks. As the sun began to rise, I had a breakthrough. The code I was writing would allow small businesses to automate their marketing in a way that had previously been available only to enterprises with massive budgets and dedicated IT teams. That morning, bleary-eyed but energized, I called an emergency meeting with my small team. I outlined the new direction and the aggressive timeline I wanted to pursue. To their credit, they caught my enthusiasm and committed to the accelerated schedule. This could be a game changer, Amir said after reviewing my preliminary design. No one else is offering anything like this in our price range. Over the next few days, we worked relentlessly to develop the new feature set. I called Martin Fisher to update him on our progress, and he was so impressed with the demo that he offered to introduce us to several potential major clients in his network. One of those introductions was particularly intriguing. A division of a larger corporation that was looking to overhaul their customer relationship systems. The company name was initially withheld for confidentiality reasons, but the opportunity was significant enough that we poured everything into preparing for the presentation. I deliberately did not mention any of this to my family. The sting of Derek's dismissal was still too fresh, and I had no desire to set myself up for another round of belittlement. This time, I would let the results speak for themselves. The meeting with the mystery client Martin arranged exceeded all expectations. We presented our platform, highlighting the new automation features, and the executives in the room were clearly impressed. Their senior technology officer stayed behind after the formal presentation, asking detailed questions about our architecture and scalability plans. We have been evaluating systems costing 10 times what you are proposing, she told me, and none of them have the flexibility or user experience of your platform. 2 days later, Martin called with the news. Not only did they want to implement our system across their division, but they were interested in discussing a potential partnership or acquisition. The client he finally revealed was Blackwell Industries, or more specifically, their business services division that provided solutions to their own clients. I nearly dropped the phone. Blackwell Industries? Derek's company. The irony was almost too perfect to be real. They are impressed with what you have built, Martin explained. Their own development team has been struggling to create a similar solution for over a year. They see acquiring your technology as a faster path to market. Over the next few weeks, as word of our innovative platform spread through industry channels, we began receiving inquiries from other potential clients and even a few tentative acquisition offers. Our small team expanded to 12 people to handle the growing workload, and we had to lease additional office space to accommodate everyone. During this period of rapid growth, I maintained complete silence about these developments with my family. At the occasional dinner or family event, I deflected questions about my work with vague responses, letting them continue to believe I was still struggling with my computer hobby. Derek, of course, continued to dominate these gatherings with tales of his corporate achievements, unaware that I was in negotiations with his employer's executive team. The acquisition talks with Blackwell progressed quickly. What began as interest in our technology evolved into a comprehensive proposal. They wanted to acquire ConnectCore entirely and establish it as their innovation division, with me staying on as director and maintaining significant equity in the parent company. The numbers they proposed were beyond anything I had imagined possible at this stage of my company's development. The initial offer was $8 million, with performance incentives that could double that amount over 3 years. Additionally, I would receive a substantial ownership stake in Blackwell itself and complete creative control over my division. Through the negotiation process, I insisted on one unusual condition: absolute confidentiality until the deal was completed. I explained that I wanted to inform my team personally and ensure their positions were secured before any public announcement. The Blackwell executives agreed, though they seemed puzzled by my insistence on secrecy. What I did not tell them was that my brother Derek worked for their company. I was concerned that if he learned about the acquisition prematurely, he might somehow interfere or attempt to diminish my achievement in the eyes of both my family and his colleagues. This was my moment, and I wanted it to unfold on my terms. The night before signing the final papers, I sat alone in my office long after everyone else had gone home. On my desk was a stack of our business cards, identical to the ones Derek had tossed in the trash. I picked one up, running my thumb over the embossed logo, reflecting on how far we had come in such a short time. The following morning, surrounded by lawyers and executives, I signed the documents that officially made ConnectCore a division of Blackwell Industries. As part of the reorganization, Blackwell was restructuring several departments to align with the new technology direction we would be spearheading. What I did not realize until after signing was that Derek's department would be among those affected by the reorganization. We are planning a company-wide meeting next month to announce the acquisition and the new structure, Blackwell's CEO informed me after the papers were signed. As the new innovation director and a major shareholder, you will be introduced to the entire company. We want everyone to understand that this represents Blackwell's future direction. I nodded, a complicated mix of emotions swirling inside me. I had achieved success beyond what my family had ever believed possible for me, but it felt strangely hollow knowing it was still connected to the company my brother had always used as a measuring stick against me. During the following weeks, my team and I began the integration process with Blackwell's existing systems. We moved into temporary offices in their corporate headquarters, while a new space was being prepared for the innovation division. I occasionally glimpsed Derek in the building, but our paths never directly crossed. From what I gathered through casual conversations with other executives, he was currently focused on a major client presentation and working long hours. The restructuring of Blackwell continued behind the scenes, with most employees unaware of the full scope of changes coming. According to the new organizational chart I reviewed with the executive team, Derek's department would now fall under my division's umbrella, essentially making me his superior in the corporate hierarchy. The realization that I would soon be my brother's boss created a complicated knot of emotions I had difficulty untangling. There was vindication, certainly, but also apprehension. Would this finally earn his respect, or would it only deepen the rift between us? More importantly, did his respect even matter to me anymore? As the date for the company-wide announcement approached, Blackwell's corporate machine shifted into high gear, preparing for what they termed a strategic direction summit. Every employee from manager level up would be required to attend in person, while others would join via video conference. The meeting would take place in the grand ballroom of Boston's most prestigious hotel, a clear signal of the importance the company placed on this announcement. My role in the event would be significant. After the CEO's introduction and overview of the acquisition, I would present ConnectCore's technology and outline our vision for the future of Blackwell's service offerings. The presentation I prepared with my team was comprehensive, detailing how our platform would transform the company's capabilities and open new market opportunities. 3 days before the meeting, I was called into a planning session with Blackwell's executive committee. The main topic was the reorganization of departments and how to present these changes to affected employees. Most transitions will be straightforward, explained Catherine Wells, the HR director. But there are a few sensitive situations we should discuss. She pulled up a slide showing several department heads who would be shifted in the new structure. Derek's name was among them. Derek Walker is currently heading the Client Solutions team, Catherine continued, not realizing the connection. Under the new structure, his team will be absorbed into the Innovation Division. Effectively, he will report to you through his new department head. I kept my expression neutral. Has he been informed of this change? Richard Barnes, the CEO, shook his head. We have not told any of the department heads about specific reporting changes yet. We thought it best to make those announcements after introducing you and explaining the strategic vision. Contextualizing the changes within the broader transformation tends to make them more palatable. I nodded, not mentioning that Derek and I were brothers. It seemed too complicated to explain at this point, and part of me wanted to preserve the element of surprise. After a lifetime of being the underestimated younger brother, I would finally have a moment of recognition that Derek could not diminish or dismiss. The evening before the big meeting, I found myself unable to sleep. I paced my hotel room, rehearsing my presentation but also imagining various scenarios of how Derek might react to the news. Would he be angry? Embarrassed? Would he try to undermine me somehow? Or would he finally acknowledge that my computer hobby had amounted to something significant after all? As I stood by the window overlooking the Boston skyline, I remembered the night after Derek had thrown away my business cards. The humiliation I had felt, the silent drive home in the rain, the determination that had fueled my late-night coding session. That night had been a turning point, pushing me to develop the very features that had ultimately attracted Blackwell's interest. In a strange way, I owed this moment to Derek's dismissal. The thought brought a complex mix of gratitude and lingering resentment. The morning of the meeting, I dressed carefully in a tailored suit that cost more than my entire wardrobe from a year ago. The man in the mirror looked confident, successful, unrecognizable from the struggling entrepreneur whose business cards had been tossed in the trash. I arrived at the hotel ballroom an hour early to check the presentation setup and coordinate with the technical team. The space was impressive, with seating for 300 people and a massive screen behind the podium. Blackwell logos adorned the walls, soon to be joined by ConnectCore branding. As I was testing the microphone, Richard Barnes arrived with several other executives. "Ready for your big debut?" he asked, clapping me on the shoulder. "As ready as I will ever be," I replied. "The acquisition of ConnectCore is the most exciting development Blackwell has seen in years," he said. "Your technology is exactly what we needed to stay competitive." The board is thrilled. As we chatted about last-minute details, hotel staff began setting up coffee and refreshments in the back of the room. Gradually, Blackwell employees started to arrive, filling the room with the buzz of conversation. I stayed near the front, reviewing my notes and occasionally glancing up to scan the growing crowd. Then I saw him. Derek entered the ballroom with a group of colleagues, looking every bit the successful corporate manager in his expensive suit and perfectly knotted tie. He was carrying a Blackwell-branded coffee mug and laughing at something one of his teammates had said. He took a seat in the middle of the room, not noticing me at the front. Watching him from a distance, I was struck by how little had changed in our dynamic. Even now, on the verge of this role reversal, he was surrounded by admirers while I stood alone. The difference was that today, everything would change. At precisely 9 o'clock, Richard Barnes stepped up to the podium and called the meeting to order. The room quickly fell silent as 300 pairs of eyes focused on the CEO. "Good morning, Blackwell team," he began. "Today marks the beginning of an exciting new chapter for our company." As Richard launched into his prepared remarks about industry changes and strategic positioning, I took several deep breaths to steady my nerves. My moment was approaching. To maintain our competitive edge, we have been searching for innovative solutions that can transform how we serve our clients, Richard continued. Today, I am thrilled to announce that Blackwell Industries has acquired ConnectCore Solutions, a groundbreaking technology company that will form the foundation of our new innovation division. A murmur of interest rippled through the audience. From my position, I could see Derek sitting up straighter, his expression attentive but showing no recognition yet. "The founder of ConnectCore has developed a platform that will revolutionize our service offerings and open entirely new market segments for Blackwell," Richard said. "He will be joining our executive team as Director of Innovation and a significant shareholder in Blackwell Industries." Richard turned toward me, extending his arm in my direction. "Please join me in welcoming Jed Walker, the owner of our new innovation division and the architect of Blackwell's future technology strategy." The applause that followed Richard's introduction felt distant as I walked to the podium, my focus entirely on Derek's reaction. For several seconds, his expression remained neutral, processing the information without recognition. Then our eyes met across the room, and I watched the realization dawn on his face in slow motion. First came confusion, his brow furrowing as he tried to reconcile the suited executive being introduced with his struggling younger brother. Then disbelief, his eyes widening as the impossible truth became undeniable. Finally shock, his body physically recoiling as if struck. The coffee mug he had been holding slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor with a crash loud enough to momentarily interrupt the applause. Coffee splashed across the polished shoes of those seated nearby, but Derek seemed not to notice, his gaze locked on me as I took my position at the podium. "Thank you, Richard," I began, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "And thank you all for the warm welcome to Blackwell Industries." As I launched into my prepared remarks about ConnectCore's technology and our vision for integration with Blackwell's existing services, I could see Derek frantically whispering to a colleague beside him. The woman looked confused, then surprised, then turned to stare at me with new interest. I continued my presentation, clicking through slides that showcased our platform's capabilities and the market opportunities it opened. With each point, I grew more confident, my voice stronger. This was my element, the technology I had built from nothing, the vision that had sustained me through years of doubt and dismissal. The future of client services lies in intelligent automation and personalized experiences at scale, I explained, warming to my subject. What ConnectCore brings to Blackwell is not just a new technology stack, but a fundamentally different approach to solving client problems. Throughout my 30-minute presentation, I occasionally glanced at Derek. He had recovered somewhat from his initial shock, but his posture remained tense, his expression a complicated mix of emotions I could not fully decipher. Several times he checked his phone, presumably searching for information about ConnectCore and my role there. Finding confirmation, no doubt, of exactly what Richard had announced. As I concluded my presentation, the room erupted in enthusiastic applause. Richard returned to the podium to explain the organizational changes that would follow the acquisition. To fully leverage the opportunities this new technology presents, he explained, we will be restructuring several departments effective immediately. What followed was a detailed breakdown of the new organizational chart, including the news that the Client Solutions Department, Derek's domain, would now report through the Innovation Division leadership, effectively placing him under my authority in the corporate hierarchy. When the formal presentation concluded, Richard invited everyone to a reception in the adjoining room where they could ask questions and learn more about the new structure. As people began to move toward the exits, I was immediately surrounded by executives and department heads eager to introduce themselves and discuss potential collaborations. From the corner of my eye, I saw Derek rise from his seat and make his way toward the podium. His expression was determined, jaw set in a way I recognized from childhood confrontations. Before he could reach me, however, he was intercepted by his direct supervisor, who steered him toward a small group of executives discussing the reorganization. For the next hour, I circulated through the reception, shaking hands and answering questions about ConnectCore's technology and my vision for Blackwell's future. Several times I glimpsed Derek on the periphery of the room, watching me but never approaching. Eventually, I lost track of him in the crowd. As the reception wound down, Catherine Wells, the HR director, approached me with a concerned expression. "I just realized something potentially awkward," she said quietly. "Derek Walker is listed as your emergency contact on your onboarding documents. Are you two related?" I nodded. "He is my older brother." Catherine's eyes widened. "Oh, I had no idea." That explains his reaction during the presentation. Should we adjust the reporting structure? It might be complicated having a family member ultimately reporting to you. "I do not think that will be necessary," I replied. "We are both professionals, and he will be reporting to a department head, not directly to me." In truth, I had not fully considered the long-term implications of our new professional relationship. The focus had been on the moment of revelation, not the days and weeks that would follow. As I prepared to leave the event, my phone buzzed with a text message from Derek. "We need to talk. Tonight. My office. 7 p.m. The message was classic Derek, direct and assuming compliance. In the past, I would have rearranged my schedule to accommodate him. Today, I typed a different response. "I have meetings until 8. I can stop by your office at 8:30. His reply came quickly. "Fine." That afternoon, I met with various Blackwell teams to begin planning the integration process. In each meeting, I was treated with a level of respect I had never experienced before. My ideas were not just heard, but actively sought out. My expertise was assumed rather than questioned. It was a stark contrast to family gatherings, where I had always been the least important voice in the room. By evening, exhaustion had begun to set in, the adrenaline of the morning giving way to the realization of how dramatically my life had changed in a single day. Still, I knew the conversation with Derek could not be postponed. This confrontation had been brewing for a lifetime. At precisely 8:30, I knocked on the door of Derek's office on the 26th floor of Blackwell Tower. Derek's office reflected his corporate success. Corner location, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor, expensive furnishings. When I entered, he was standing behind his desk, silhouetted against the city lights, his posture rigid with tension. "Close the door," he said, his voice carefully controlled. I complied, then took a seat in one of the visitor chairs without waiting for an invitation. The dynamic between us had shifted, and we both knew it. "So," Derek began, "all this time you were negotiating with Blackwell behind my back." "I did not know you worked in this division until after the acquisition was underway," I replied evenly. "By then, the confidentiality agreements were already signed." "But you knew I worked for Blackwell. You could have told me." "Like you told me about your promotion to department head," I countered. "I found out about that at Dad's birthday party from Mom." Derek ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I recognized from childhood. "That is different." "Is it?" "When have you ever shown genuine interest in my work, Derek? When have you ever treated my ambitions with respect?" A heavy silence followed my questions. Derek moved from behind his desk and took the chair across from me. For the first time, I noticed how tired he looked, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. "You have to understand," he finally said, his voice softer now. I never thought. This was never supposed to happen. What was never supposed to happen? This. You, he gestured vaguely toward me. Being successful. Being my boss. The blunt admission hung in the air between us. Why not? I asked, genuinely curious. Derek leaned forward, elbows on knees, gaze directed at the floor. You were always the creative one, the dreamer. I was the practical one, the achiever. That was our dynamic. That was how it worked. For you, maybe. You do not understand, Derek continued, finally meeting my eyes. I needed that dynamic. I needed to be the successful one. Why? Because that was all I had. The words burst from him with surprising force. You were always Dad's favorite. Did you know that? You think he favored me, but you are wrong. He admired you. Your creativity, your willingness to take risks. Things he was too afraid to do himself. I stared at him, struggling to reconcile this version of our childhood with my memories. That is absurd. They celebrated everything you did. My achievements were barely acknowledged. They pushed me because they knew I needed the push. They left you alone because they trusted you to find your own path. Derek stood up, pacing now. Do you have any idea how hard I worked for every bit of recognition? How terrified I was of failing? Meanwhile, you just did whatever interested you, without pressure. Without support, you mean? I corrected him. Without encouragement. Maybe, he conceded. But also without the crushing expectations. Do you know what Dad said when I got this promotion? He said, good. That is what we expected, not congratulations. Not well done. Just acknowledgement that I had met the minimum requirement. I considered his words, trying to see our shared history from his perspective. Had I misinterpreted our parents' behavior all these years? Had Derek's apparent confidence masked a deep insecurity? When you showed up with those business cards, Derek continued, part of me wanted to be supportive. But another part, the scared part, needed to put you back in your box. If you could succeed on your own terms, following your own path, what did that say about all my safe choices? All my compromises? The confession landed like a revelation, reshaping my understanding of our relationship. Derek had not dismissed my efforts out of arrogance, but out of fear. His contempt had been a shield, protecting his own fragile sense of worth. I never wanted to compete with you, Derek, I said quietly. I just wanted your respect. And now you have earned it, he replied, a hint of wry humor entering his voice for the first time. Rather dramatically, I might add. The tension between us eased slightly. Derek returned to his chair, his posture less defensive. So what happens now? He asked. Are you going to fire me? Demote me? I would understand if you did. I shook my head. No. You are good at what you do. The client solutions team has strong performance metrics. It would be stupid to disrupt that out of personal feeling. But I will be reporting to your division. To Amanda Chen in my division, I clarified. She is brilliant, and I think you will work well together. I do not plan to micromanage either of you. Derek nodded slowly, processing this information. And what about with the family? Are you going to tell them? They will find out eventually. But I am not planning a big reveal at Sunday dinner, if that is what you are asking. A knock at the door interrupted our conversation. Derek's assistant poked her head in. Sorry to disturb you, but your wife called. She wanted to remind you about dinner with her parents tonight. Derek glanced at his watch and swore under his breath. Tell her I am on my way. After the assistant left, he turned back to me. I have to go. But this conversation is not finished. No, I agreed. It is not. The following day, my team officially moved into Blackwell headquarters while our permanent space was being prepared. I was assigned a temporary office on the executive floor, 2 doors down from Richard Barnes. The symbolism of my new location within the corporate hierarchy was not lost on anyone. Throughout the week, I immersed myself in the integration process, meeting with various departments to explain how our technology would affect their operations. Derek and I maintained a professional distance during this period, nodding politely when our paths crossed, but saving our personal conversation for a more appropriate time. That opportunity came the following Sunday, when our parents invited us both to dinner. I arrived first, helping my mother in the kitchen while my father watched a baseball game in the living room. "So how is the new job going?" my mother asked as she chopped vegetables. "Derek mentioned you are working at Blackwell now. That is wonderful that he helped you get in." I smiled faintly but said nothing, waiting for Derek to arrive before addressing the misunderstanding. When the doorbell rang 20 minutes later, my father called out from the living room. "Jed, get the door for your brother." "Old habits die hard," I thought as I went to answer it. But to my surprise, when I opened the door, Derek was not alone. His wife Susan stood beside him, and between them was Martin Fisher, my investor and mentor. "Hope you do not mind the extra guests," Derek said with an uncharacteristic hint of nervousness. I thought it was time for proper introductions. Dinner that evening became the setting for a very different kind of family meeting. With Martin's help, Derek explained the truth about my role at Blackwell and the acquisition of ConnectCore. Our parents listened with growing astonishment as the reality of my professional achievement became clear. "But why did neither of you tell us?" my mother asked, looking between us. "I was sworn to confidentiality during negotiations," I explained. "And I only found out when it was announced to the entire company," Derek added wryly. My father had been uncharacteristically quiet throughout the explanation. Finally, he cleared his throat and looked directly at me. "I always knew you had potential, Jed. But I never imagined anything like this. I am very proud of you, son." The words I had waited a lifetime to hear from him landed with surprising gentleness. There was no swelling music, no dramatic epiphany, just a quiet acknowledgement that changed everything and nothing all at once. After dinner, Derek pulled me aside, reaching into his jacket pocket. "I have something for you," he said, handing me a small box. Inside was a leather business card holder, with my initials engraved on the front. And inside the holder was a stack of new business cards. "Jed Walker, Executive Director of Innovation, Blackwell Industries." "Peace offering," he said simply. 6 months later, the integration of ConnectCore into Blackwell was complete. Our division had moved into a renovated floor of the headquarters building, open plan and modern, reflecting the innovative culture we were building. Derek's team had become one of our strongest internal collaborators, his practical understanding of client needs perfectly complementing our technical capabilities. Our relationship, both professional and personal, had evolved into something neither of us could have predicted. The competition that had defined our childhood had transformed into mutual respect and even occasional collaboration. We would never be best friends. The years of tension had left too many scars for that, but we had found a balance that worked. More importantly, I had found my own measure of success. Not defined by comparison to Derek or approval from my parents, but by the impact of my work and the growth of something I had built from nothing but an idea and persistence. The journey from having my business cards thrown in the trash to becoming a key executive at one of the country's leading firms had taught me a valuable lesson. True success is not measured by titles or wealth or even recognition from others. It is measured by the courage to pursue your own vision when no one else believes in it, by the resilience to transform rejection into determination, and by the wisdom to value your achievements for what they represent to you, not for the validation they might bring from others. I still keep one of my original ConnectCore business cards in my wallet, not as a reminder of Derek's dismissal, but as a tangible connection to the person I was when the only one who believed in my vision was me. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes that is everything. If my story resonated with you in any way, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Has a family member ever doubted your dreams, only for you to prove them wrong? Share your experience in the comments below. Your journey might be the inspiration someone else needs right now. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, The greatest satisfaction comes not from proving others wrong, but from proving yourself right. Until next time,